Welcome to I'll Marry You, a podcast with me, Olivia Coleman, full of tips and tricks from the UK wedding scene, interviews with industry experts, and a whole lot of oversharing.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day, and welcome to a whole new episode of the I'll Marry You podcast with me, Olivia Coleman. I hope you've had a wonderful week. I did something very exciting yesterday. Not that exciting. Actually, I did something really weird the day before, so I'm not going to tell you that. No, I'm not. You're such a tinker. So yesterday I interviewed someone who I have admired from afar, from a social media far for a while, and we've chatted several times. And finally we got to meet in person because I was interviewing her for the podcast. So I'm not going to tell you who it is. It's very exciting. And she is going to come on hopefully before Christmas, but I will keep you posted. So that was wonderful. And then we had, oh God, look at the size of this bump. And then we had Lola's parents' evening. And I didn't know what to say or do or ask. First of all, the headmistress made me sit on a child's seat. I said to her, I can't sit on an adult seat at the moment. I have to roll off the sofa. Why do you think I can sit on a child's seat? So I sat on a beanbag. And all I asked is that, is she popular? And apparently she is. She says she's very, you don't care, but I'm going to tell you anyway, I'm a proud mama. She said she's very good at initiating the games and telling people their roles, but she doesn't like it when they don't fulfil those roles. And I looked at my husband and said, that is teacher speak for she a bossy bitch, which we know. But she also said she's a star. And the other day she was walking around calling everyone darling and singing Consider Yourself from Oliver Twist. I myself have never been prouder. That's really all that matters, isn't it? So that was a fun little Monday. At the weekend, I didn't have a wedding, but on the Thursday of last week, I did, and it was gorgeous at Hyde House in Stow-on-the-Wold, where I've been to a few times, strangely only ever in autumn winter. They do weddings all year round. But it's a beautiful venue for George and Scott, and it was lovely, really, really lovely. He did that classic thing, you know, and no, I'm not nervous, what are you on about? And then 30 seconds before she's about to walk down the aisle, he literally is like shaking, quivering in his boots. And I really felt for one of the ushers, because he was playing the piano to her walking down the aisle. And I was like, oh, are you professional? And he was like, no, I've just been learning it for a couple of years. I was like, okay, great. That's not nerve-wracking at all. He was terrified. So I didn't do my normal bit, which I do when someone says that they're in charge of music and I say, good luck, because that's the worst job of all. But that went really, really well. That was lovely. Great team of suppliers as well. And then this weekend, I'm at the Mount Without in Bristol. And hopefully, unless I pop before then. But we still have 5.5 weeks to go. So fingers crossed, legs crossed, all the rest of it. Everything's crossed, because I want to do my weddings. So yes, we've got the Mount Without this weekend, so that'll be gorge. She's got a little girl. Well, she's not that little anymore. I think she's sort of 12 or 13 even. And she's doing a reading, so there will not be a dry eye in the house. It's always the kids. No matter how old they are, it's always the kids that get the tears flowing. So that'll be really exciting. It's all kicking off, and I'm just sort of waddling around the place, trying to do as much podcasting as I can before I have a child attached to my tit, you know. So I hope you enjoy this episode, which is a story time. So I won't tell you too much about it, because I'm about to tell you all about it for half an hour. Enjoy, and I will see you all next Tuesday.
Hi. Still here. Still up the duff. Just getting fatter and fatter by the day, I am. I don't know if you remember, I told you the other week that I've started to feel quite breathless. So this episode might be brief, to be honest, because I'm bloody knackered. And I'm breathless. I'm hungry, but I'm full at the same time. It's a nightmare. on this week's episode, I wanted to take you back to a fabulous... Why is Alexa talking to me? I literally didn't even say her name. Alexa, stop! My friends, Anna, the other day, being very disobedient. She has an accent, but surely her Alexa should be used to that. That's a good point, actually. Do Alexas... Now, I was going to tell you, do we like the way that my train of thought just flits from one thought to the other? Let's put this mic down a bit. Producer Drew would tell me. Better? I was going to tell you an Alexa story the other week, wasn't I? And I didn't. I held back. But I'm going to now. I don't think I've told you this before. So I know Alexa. Let that sink in, won't you? I know Alexa. I know her. The voice of Alexa. I know her. She is a very old, as in not she's old, as in she is a long-term family friend of my husband's family. Literally, she's known my husband since he was born. So I've known her since I've been with him, which is 16 years. And she is an actress and a voiceover artist, and she's the voice of Alexa. And we met her weirdly in London on the train coming from Paddington home, because she lives near us. And we were like, oh my God, what are the odds? How funny. And so we sat next to each other and we were just chit-chatting. And she basically said, look, I was like, oh, were you in London for a job or whatever? And she said, yeah. And she was being really shady. And I was like, oh, were you doing something good? Come on, tell me. You can tell me. And she was like, do you know what? I am going to tell you, because I've got to hope this doesn't get her sued. Might do. She was like, I'm going to tell you because I don't care anymore, because she'd finished. But basically, she was the voice of Alexa. She spent months and months and months in a padded cell in Europe somewhere, just her and a sound guy in darkness, recording every single word and sound that you could possibly imagine. Isn't that cool? So I was against getting an Alexa for years because I didn't want the idea of her telling me what to do all the time. But then I got one, and obviously I now live by it. But also, my biggest regret, one of my biggest wedding day regrets, is that I didn't have her as our MC. How amazing would that have been? To say that the MC of your wedding was the voice of Alexa. You have to say that so she doesn't answer back. Because that was after she'd recorded it and she was there because she's such a close family friend. So that is a big regret of mine. Anyway, isn't that a fun little tidbit? Right, so this week, story time, and I'm going to tell you all about this gorgeous, gorgeous couple, Steve and Greg, who I married in the summer. So, Steve and Greg, gorgeous couple, when they came to me, oh God, stretching. When they came to me, we just got on so well, so quickly. And I write notes about all my couples. I write very personal notes so that I can remember them. And I always have done. And sometimes, if I think the vibe is right, I'll tell them their notes. They're generally always like positive, because if they weren't positive, then they wouldn't be one of my couples. But and they're tiny, they're small little sort of bullet points. So for this couple, Steve and Greg, I wrote, really lovely couple, really nice, both very handsome, significant age gap. Because one is about 20 years older than the other. So I actually used that line in the introduction of their ceremony, because by the time their wedding rolled around, I knew them well enough to know that that would be well received, and it was. In fact, ceremony-wise with Steve and Greg, I got away with quite a lot, if I'm honest. They walked in together. They walked in after their throng of gorgeous men, all of their groomsmen, and they walked down the aisle together, and they decided to do a ring warming. Again, possibility to be cancelled, apologies in advance, but when we were chatting before the day, I said to them, I always say to my couples, would you like any rituals or symbols or anything like that? sort of slightly out of the ordinary, I suppose. Would you like to include any of that? And they were like, oh, what would that look like? So I was going through things and I said, and they are very open about their sexuality. Neither of them actually are particularly camp, I would say, but they're just they're very open about it, and they'll take jokes about it and banter about it, and they'll initiate the jokes and the banter. And so I knew I could get away with being a bit cheeky. So I said, look, I say this as someone who cares. As two gay men getting married and a congregation of a lot of queer people, I would be remiss if I wasn't to use the phrase ring warming. And they thought that was absolutely hilarious and brilliant. So I explained what the ring warming was, which is when, of course, you take the box with the rings in and you pass it around each guest during the ceremony so that they can bless the rings. And I always introduce it right at the beginning of the ceremony, and then it happens during the ceremony, and then you get it back for the ring exchange. And so I said in the ceremony, this is going to put some of you off me. And I apologise, but every ceremony for every couple is different, and it's for that couple. So for this couple, this worked. They were happy with it, okay? I explained to their guests what a ring warming was, but I started the explanation with, today we have chosen to do a ring warming because no one likes a cold ring. If you're as filthy-minded as I am, then you get it. Ring. But it got the biggest laugh ever. We couldn't stop laughing. We had to stop for like minutes because we all got the giggles so badly. So that was in the first 3 minutes of the ceremony. So that's just an idea of how much I could get away with during this ceremony. They're a very lovely, very open, very fun couple. And a very modern couple as well. So Greg, the younger of the two, he decided, they met when he was quite young. And so he's decided, since they have got engaged, that he was going to move to London. They both lived sort of Salisbury, Andover way beforehand. And they were going to live apart for a little bit. And they said that to me during our planning meeting. And they were like, are you like judging? Like, that's weird, isn't it? And I was like, not at all. It's 2024. You're having a modern relationship where you can basically design your own lives and choose your own lifestyle. And if you choose to get married and then live apart, amen to you. I mean, I dream of the day. So that's just to give you an idea of how sort of non-traditional they are. And so when I wrote the ceremony, there were certain parts of it that I would write as I would ordinarily write, which is to include traditional bits. However, when they came back with changes, they changed a lot of the traditional bits. So they didn't want me to refer to them as husbands, and they didn't want me to refer to them as married, like the married couple, the newlyweds. They referred to it as a commitment, as a partnership, as a declaration of their intent. It was interesting for me because they were approaching it in a way, and this is quite unusual for a couple who are just about to get married, but they were approaching it in a way that was almost like, we're getting married because we are madly in love with each other and we see our lives together forever. But we're also realistic, and we know that it might not last forever, but this is how we feel for right now. This is the commitment we want to make right now. And some people might say, listening might be a bit sort of cynical and say, well, that's not, why would you get married if you think it's going to end? No one gets married thinking it's going to end, unless they shouldn't get married, unless you're J-Lo. But I found it oddly refreshing. That idea that actually, let's be realistic, this is where we are in our lives right now. You never know what's going to happen. You never know how people are going to grow together or apart, what jobs you might do, what the future might look like. I mean, some people meet when they're so young and they don't know. But people are scared to say it, aren't they? I said to James the other day, I on occasion do plan my single life. He didn't take it well. But no, I joke. No, I don't joke. But it's, I think as you grow up, and I don't just mean in terms of age, I mean in terms of life and experience and emotional maturity, you realise that as wonderful as being in love is and as magical as marriage is, it doesn't always work out for everyone. And I found it refreshing that they were going into their wedding day saying, this is how we feel right now. And we're 100% committed, but we're also honest and open. And we don't want to label it husbands. We don't want to label it marriage. This is us committing to how we feel right now and hoping that it will continue forever. And I liked that. So even though it felt quite foreign to me to not say the certain traditional elements of the ceremony that I would ordinarily, it worked for them. And I respect them for coming back to me with those changes and sticking to their guns and not worrying about what other people might think or how other people might perceive the wording that was or was not used. So I knew going into the day that it was going to be quite an untraditional day. And boy, it did not disappoint. It did not disappoint. So they got married at Harewood Forest in Andover. And I actually emailed the man who owns it because I want him to come onto the podcast, because this venue is something else. And he is quite quirky, really funny, fascinating guy, great story. So I want him to come on. So hopefully, by the time this episode airs, the follow-up will be the interview with Ben. Anyway, so Harewood Forest. So I'd not been there before. And you go on their website, and it's quite a quirky website, and it doesn't really give much away. But Steve and Greg had messaged beforehand to say these are the directions. They're quite specific. It's quite a tricky place to find. So I thought, okay, I think it might be a forest, this Harewood Forest. It might be a forest. So, but it was a bloody forest. I'm not joking you. Right, so you literally come off the dual carriageway and you go down a little country road, and then there's just a little sign, nothing big, nothing fancy, nothing major, just a little sign that says Harewood Forest and an arrow. And then you drive down this track, because it's not even like a country lane, it's a track. And you go through fields. In terms of time frame, driving at like 20 miles an hour, the point of coming off the country road to getting to the actual spot where the wedding was a good 5 minutes. So we are talking middle of the woods, seriously remote. As I was driving down, then you come into the clearing, and then you come into the forest. There was a sign on one of the trees that was like, be careful of bears. And I don't think it was joking. I think it was serious. So I did my windows up, didn't I? Locked the doors in case. Oh, my mum's trying to FaceTime me. I'll call her back. Lock the doors because, bears know how to open doors. There was a walking group, a rambling group, if you will. Nodded at them, didn't I? Very pleasant like that. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And you end up in the bloody woods. It's woods. I can't explain it to you any other way. There is no obvious clearing. There is no lake. There is no, well, where I was anyway. It is full on woodland. I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, I've seen woods before. I grew up in the countryside, but you park in amongst the trees, and then I could see people sort of pottering around, and I could see life. I could see some teepees, and then I found the festoon lighting that was sort of lighting the path. So I assumed that's where I should go. So I walked along, and I came to, and it wasn't even a clearing. I can't stress this enough. But it was, I don't know quite how to explain it. Which is why I'm keen to get the guy who created this magical place on the podcast. It was like, it wasn't even a hut. It was like a lodge next to an area that had been sectioned off with it was all completely natural, like bamboo, wood, twigs, trees, bushes, branches, flowers, completely natural. Nothing about it was modern or manufactured. it is, and it looked like it had just been created from nothing by a team of real handy men, or women. And so you walked sort of over this bridge, little bridge, and then you opened this old wooden creaky door, and you're into this sort of sectioned off area that had the ceremony space. So there were it was all like there was no carpet or flooring. It was all Mother Nature, and the ceremony benches, and people were sort of starting to sit down. And they had the Bristol harpist, who was brilliant always, and that worked really well. The sound of the harp with the nature, and then you sort of sidestep the ceremony space, which is just I can't even explain it to you, which is ideal on a podcast, I know. And then you go into what is sort of a makeshift cabin, hut, lodge. But there you've got flooring, but it's all wooden, of course. And then you've got a bar, all wooden. And you've got little seating nooks with like old-fashioned vintage chaiselongs and sofas and tables all made out of wood, but like hand-carved. So unique, so quirky. And then you go down into another space, which is where the dance floor would be, or just another sort of reception space, I suppose, for bigger guest numbers. And that had a makeshift roof on it, and there was fairy lights everywhere, and vintage tin signs on the walls, and vintage props, for want of a better phrase, dotted around. Then there was another space, the toilets. I didn't actually go to the toilets, but I don't imagine they were modern. And then there was another space that was outside that had all the tables set up for the dinner, long trestle tables. It was just magical. It was like something from Peter Pan or something like that. I'd never ever seen anything like it. Honest to God, it was unbelievable. Harewood Forest. I will put pictures up, but you've got to look at it just to... And they don't do many weddings because of the nature of the venue being in a bloody woodland. There's not really like a wet weather plan. So they only, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, when I speak to you, hopefully, when you come on to be interviewed, they only do them in the summer and they only do them at the weekends. So there's a limited number of weddings they do every year, which again, I think makes it feel even more special. The whole thing is just absolutely magical. I'll post the reel that I did of it. Really, really quite special. So we had the ceremony. They were all hanging around. All the guys were hanging around. They looked so handsome. They were wearing, sort of in keeping with the style of the venue, they were wearing tweed suits. And they looked so handsome. And they were just chilling, just chatting, having coffee amongst all the guests. So as the guests were arriving, because a lot of them were staying in teepees around the main area, I suppose. So as the guests were arriving, they were just in the bar having drinks and chatting to everyone, which was really lovely because it instantly gave that relaxed vibe. I mean, the venue itself, you knew you weren't walking into some sort of monochrome, modern glamour wedding. But having the guests arrive and then the two grooms being there to greet them and chat to them, and it was all very low key, very cash, really lovely. And then the ceremony started, and the ceremony went really well. Another thing that's interesting about them is they both love movies, love movies, but they don't love photos of themselves. And so they chose to spend their money on a videographer, but not a photographer, which I'd never had before. Obviously, often people will have a photographer and not a videographer, but I've never had it the other way around. And they had Natasha, the gorgeous Natasha from Musk, photography and videography. And she was brilliant. So it was a very small team. It was literally myself, the harpist, and the videographer. And I mean, obviously they had the caterer and some music later on, and the bar staff and everything. But it was a very small team. There wasn't stylists running around or wedding planners in and out, which again added to sort of the slightly mythical, magical element of it. And then after the ceremony, they had drinks and then went into the rest of the day. In terms of format, quite traditional format, I think. But it was really magical and different. So I wanted to tell you about it.
So this week's RSVP is a DM from the lovely Jessica, and she says, "Hi Olivia, love the podcast. You're so funny and entertaining." Thank you, Jessica. Jessica's clearly mad or drunk or both, but thank you. She writes, "I'm getting married next spring and I keep seeing things on the internet where the bride has a haircut, oh God, halfway through the wedding day. I'm really tempted to do it. What do you think?" I don't know. I've seen this. Have you seen this? I have seen it online where the bride will have like long hair, and then after the drinks reception, before the meal or before the party, when they might change outfits, they'll like cut the hair into like a bob. I think it's too risky. I think if you want it for a bit of fun and a bit of wow factor, wear a wig, babe. Do you know what I mean? Wear a wig. I think it's too risky. I really do. You're going to wow everyone anyway. Like, change your outfit into something ridiculous with feathers and sequins and glitter. But no. It's a no from me. I'm too cautious. No. It makes me nervous just thinking about it. Okay, no. Jessica, no. Don't do it, okay? You're a beautiful, beautiful woman. And just the benefit of, oh my God, she's just cut her hair off, does not outweigh the, oh my God, she's just cut her hair off and it looks shit. Okay? Don't do it. The end. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world. If you find this podcast even remotely helpful or moderately entertaining, share with all your friends and family. You can DM me any questions, queries, if you want to share any stories on the podcast Instagram at I'll Marry You Podcast. Get in touch. I want to hear all your tall tales. See you soon.
I'll Marry You is a podcast by Olivia Coleman. The music is Mr. Sunnyface by Wayne Jones, and the show is produced and edited by Drew Toynbee.